Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Mastermind. This week, we're going to talk about building rapport and buyer confidence with prospects. So, exciting topic. Outbound calling, outbound sales, not the favorite thing of most landscapers, but these two skills are super important whether you're just doing, first meetings or reaching out to somebody over the phone and just trying to book a meeting. I think learning how to build rapport, learning how to really kind of build sort of confident approach to prospecting, I think is really a game changer in the business. So we're going to kind of dive into this and get into the weeds over the next 30 minutes or so together. Hopefully you're here for the whole series. We've been kind of talking about sales as a group here over the past few weeks. If you've missed any of these sessions, you can always watch on the Landscape Disruptors channel or the LMN YouTube channel. Past episodes are all there. This is kind of a 10-part series that we're working on right now, informally. It'll kind of turn into a few other sales conversations as we sort of wrap through the summer months. But ideally, we'll kind of get people to take the 10-part series, and that'll sort of warm people up and prepare for some of the things we're going to talk about in the fall, which is really kind of connecting this whole sales process to operations and really driving efficiency in the way that we sell and the way that we hand work off and sort of transform the business by connecting sales and operations. So again, thanks for joining this week. Throw your location up in the chat where you're from and any questions as we go throughout today in the chat as well. So today, what we're going to kind of cover is the importance of building rapport in sales and how this buyer confidence can really transform your success rates when you're out selling. I think oftentimes landscapers as owner operators, they kind of know how to sell instinctively, because when you kind of hang out your shingle and you start selling landscape work, your life depends on it. You've got to get out there and sell or you can't pay the bills. And the way that we sell as owner operators is often a little bit different than the way that sales teams need to sell when you start to scale up and get others out selling. And some of the things that you may have done just really instinctively and really naturally as an owner operator selling don't always work as well when people just try to replicate it, because there's a certain amount of personalization that just can't always be duplicated without creating some systems and some sort of techniques and tools and resources for sales teams to use. So we're going to talk a lot about how to build this buyer confidence and some things that you can do in your business to scale up selling. So first off, what is rapport? Ultimately, it's really just this relationship that we're trying to develop with a customer that ensures that there's like mutual respect and understanding, and that ultimately you know each other well enough to have a conversation about more detailed things. Kind of when you've got rapport, you've got this opportunity to ask deeper questions without coming across too strong. And I think you've also got an opportunity to provide some really compelling statements and compelling information without somebody kind of feeling unheard themselves. And so we want to build a little rapport so that we can open up the floor to start selling. And so I think, lots of salespeople, we've all dealt with salespeople who have this almost annoying approach where they come at you with self-serving questions and I think really, really powerful sales pitch type statements way too fast. And before you feel like they understand you or what you want or what your problems even are, they're kind of telling you how they can help you. And we see this everywhere in life. I mean, social media, we've got people telling us what our problems are who don't know us. When we walk into car dealerships, oftentimes they're telling us about their discounts and their deals before they know, what kind of vehicle we're actually looking for, or what issues we face in a week, and how, maybe selecting a vehicle that matches our lifestyle might work. So we all know this, but I think sometimes we just don't teach people how to really build rapport really, really well. And so you probably heard me talk about Jeffrey Gitomer's Sales Bible book before. It's an incredible book. I always refer to it. Super helpful when training your sales staff. Super helpful even when thinking through sales process development, even marketing. I think it's a great book. If you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend it. In the book, he kind of talks a lot about how to build rapport using these simple tools. Active listening, obviously just really asking a few questions that allow the customer just to talk freely about their needs and concerns, or what they're looking for, their preferences and style, for example, or methods of doing business. Could be the way that we price things or contract, could be many different things, but just really understanding that we shouldn't start selling until we've asked the right questions and we've done the right amount of listening. Really understanding how to apply empathy to the customer situation, and how to kind of translate that empathy into better statements that sort of help you position yourself as a trusted advisor, and really answer to the concerns or the problems that they've shared that they've got currently. That often is having the ability to tell them about a scenario where you've experienced something similar, or you've helped another customer overcome a similar problem. Things like mirroring and matching. This is, kind of subtle, but being able to take your energy level down to the customer's energy level. If they're a faster talker, you should probably pick up the pace. If they're a slower, more relaxed talker, you should probably, calm down a little bit and stay on their pace. So the way that our tone, the way that our body language, the energy level that we sort of carry, it could be too much or too little for people. And so ultimately we want to be able to mirror other people's energy levels and just kind of put them at ease based around the fact that, they feel like aligned with us as salespeople. And building trust, you're making sure that we have really clear statements that allow us to build honesty and transparency into the conversation very quickly. And again, these opportunities come from being able to ask the right questions and listen first. But ultimately, we want to be able to build trust and find this common ground as quickly as possible. We want to allow that prospect to feel as though we see the world from a similar perspective as quickly as possible. And obviously, we all know that we look for positive attitude in every interaction. But actually, knowing that you're showing up with a positive attitude and like being very conscious of that and understanding how you bring a positive attitude to the conversation, I think is pretty important. And again, that does take practice. And that's why I'm such a big fan of role play training. Whether you're role playing in the seat of the customer or role playing in the seat of the salesperson, you're learning. All the while you're practicing active listening and empathy and mirroring and matching and methods of building trust. But ultimately, what we want to do is we want to be able to confirm that we sell with a positive attitude and that we approach customers with positivity, regardless of how difficult they are to sort of share value with, or how difficult they may seem to be in just communicating in general. We want to be able to show up and make sure that we can really explain the value that we offer in the way that we offer it to solve their problems. So ultimately, we need to know what their problems are long before we start selling. And then we have to be very well versed in how we solve those problems and add value differently than our competitors. So ultimately, what we're trying to do here is we're always trying to create buyer confidence. Now, as a salesperson, I think it's really important that you identify one thing very clearly. It's your job to help people solve their problems when you're in sales. And I think that in itself is often overlooked. Your job is just simply to help other people solve their problems when you're in sales. And when you believe that, and when you start to live that way, your closing rates are definitely going to improve. And some other things will improve as well. The type of customers that you decide to focus on selling, and then the type of business that you end up closing will improve, because when you help people solve problems, you immediately start to understand that you have to have a company that's capable of solving those problems. And so what happens is you start to focus more on your ideal customer profile and then developing an operation that matches the needs of those customers. And so this is something that I'm really working toward with this sales process. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk through this over the next few weeks, but then in the September, October sessions, we're going to kind of connect this up with operational success. And so we want to enter meetings knowing that customers have problems. We want to know what those problems are likely to be, and we want to know that we've got the operational business to solve those problems. And when we walk in super confident, it makes it much easier to actually ensure that the customer or the prospect walks out as confident as we are. And so the reason that we want to do this, and the impact that we're really trying to have by building this confidence, is really, we want to eliminate the hesitation that the customers have. We want them to see us as the trusted advisors. We want to be able to get them on our pathway to success, to overcoming their problem as quickly as possible. We want to make sure that they're willing to invest their money in this solution, which means we have to make sure that they see the value of spending that money and that they see the return on investment very, very clearly in hiring us to help them solve this problem. And then we want, to remove the price sensitivity entirely, because when they see the return on investment and they see the value in our proposal over our competitors, price leaves the equation. And most companies that I talk to in workshops show up with this sort of burning question: how do I get past price sensitivity? And this is it. Your ability to build confidence early in the process, and then really explain value and make sure that they understand how you offer more value for the dollar spent than your competitors. That is the secret weapon there. And so understanding how to do that based on each specific buyer persona is the magic. We need that buyer persona to be able to understand what it is that we're selling, why there's more value in doing business with us than our competitors. And although we might be more expensive, we need them to understand why we're more expensive and why it makes sense to spend more money in order to realize the return on that investment. So yes, it costs more, but you get more value. And in the end, you have more for your money. And here's why. We have to be able to create that type of confidence. Once you get really good at doing that, I think everything changes. The type of customers that you get, the margins that you get to work within, the trust and the ability to actually make recommendations that cost more money, but deliver a lot more value and solve the problems that the customer has really called for. So how do we do this? Ultimately, there's many, many different ways to do this based on each customer profile. Now, for today, I just thought we could discuss how to do it more so than specific to each buyer persona. But in some upcoming events, I want to talk a lot more about really building confidence with each persona type. So whether it's a property manager of a commercial office park, a Class A office park, or whether it's a homeowner who's looking to buy a $1 million backyard. Very different buyers, but ultimately we have to, if we are going to go out and sell different types of customer profiles, we have to be able to understand what's going to create the confidence with that profile. And we want to make sure that we've got compelling questions, compelling statements, and the right sort of statements to really create a belief or a clarity between them and you when you're selling them of these things that we're about to cover here now. And so what we want to make sure is you have these check marks next to these boxes. You know, do I know how to really relay expertise and knowledge to a property manager of a Class A office park? What is it that I'm going to say? What do I want to make sure that they hear in every sales meeting? And once I've got that list, then I can create compelling questions and compelling statements that make sure that that specific buyer persona is always going to understand my expertise and knowledge. And so again, the delivery mechanism for this, for building this buyer confidence, is always compelling questions with compelling statements or power statements that really support the effort. So I want to make sure they know I'm the expert. I want to make sure that they know how and why we're in business, what problems we typically solve, all the basics, right? We got to be really good at packing that into a power statement that can kind of almost turn into a 30-second commercial, which we did talk about that a few weeks back. I want to be able to position myself as an expert very, very quickly. I want to be able to say, my name's Mark. I'm here from X Landscape Company. I help commercial property managers like you reduce risk, eliminate all the frustration of managing their exterior property needs. And I like to do this by helping you manage everything on a fixed budget. You know, when we say something like that to somebody, they immediately know, okay, well, this guy helps people like me every day. They take care of the property. They understand that I'm on a tight budget. That wasn't the best pitch ever by any means. I just want you to be able to clearly speak to their three biggest problems by telling them how you help people. So whatever that buyer persona is, make sure that your I help statement lets them know that you help people that are just like them, acknowledge their problems, and tell them how you help, all within 30 seconds. And so this expertise and knowledge piece is kind of the foundation. Obviously, we want to be really clear communicators. I think the more that we can show up for meetings and describe what the process looks like, over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to make sure that I understand your need, that I put together a proposal, that we meet to review this proposal, and that we find a way to do business together. How does that sound, right? When we start talking to somebody, we want to create expectations, and then they understand what the timeline looks like. We understand what the timeline looks like, and we save ourselves a lot of headaches in not knowing what happens next. So we want to be very clear. The sooner that we get to showing portfolio of previous work, the better. And again, once we get through those initial questions and we're really feeling comfortable, we want to really start to be able to lay down a portfolio, and we want to tell them about other customers, and we want to tell case studies, and we want to show them just how qualified we are. And we want to kind of show them just how incredible our past experience is, because, you know, qualifications and experience are ultimately what they're looking for early on in the sale. So we want to make sure that we get the trust based on what we've done in the past. We want that social proof to come through as quickly as possible. Now, we have to find ways of doing that in a really natural way. And so I think oftentimes landscapers are missing a few key things. There's tools that we need, and I think there's some resources. When you have a sales strategy that involves a face-to-face meeting where you're going to sit down at either a desk or at the dining table with a client, depending on if it's commercial or residential, and you get an opportunity to ask some key questions and deliver some key information, I think this really changes everything. So within your process, people need to understand exactly what the meeting is going to look like. And so I think when you send a invite for a meeting, we want to kind of itemize what we're going to go through in the meeting. And one thing that we really want to kind of talk about is in any case, whether it's commercial, residential, install, maintenance, tree care, irrigation, doesn't matter what segment, we want to make sure that we build an opportunity into our sales meeting to talk about customer testimonials, to talk about our certifications and credentials, to talk about what makes us different in terms of our training programs with our staff, how we operate the business in terms of using technology to automate a lot of communication and improve the billing accuracy and the service verification and prevent risk and prevent service delays, all of these types of concerns that would come up. And so we want to structure sales meetings to allow us to ask the questions and explain what makes us different. And we want to bring tools and resources with us. And so one of the things that I often recommend is a really good leave behind portfolio. This may cost $30, $40, $50 to build each copy. But if you're selling really expensive contracts for landscape maintenance or really expensive backyards like swimming pools and extensive landscaping, $40 or $50 is not expensive, because if you're doing this really well, if you're screening your calls before you go do meetings and then you're going out and meeting with the right prospects, you'll probably have an exceptionally high close rate. And so to spend $40 or $50 on a leave behind package that is incredibly compelling, that really does explain who you are and what you do at a different level, that in itself is a game changer. And so I can't stress enough how much time, money, and effort it's worth putting into a really good portfolio, whether it's for residential or for commercial. That's where a lot of this comes out. And if it's big and beautiful, you can talk about all of these things really naturally as you're going through a portfolio that's designed to go through in the right order. And so we can talk about how we have the best warranty in the business. We can talk about how we don't do warranties unless you have an irrigation system installed while we're doing your landscaping. Whatever that happens to be, we can talk about it really confidently as we go through a brochure or a portfolio that actually walks us through the sales process. And so I always think that your portfolio should be a reflection of your sales process. How are we planning to sell is how we want to build our proposals. It's how we want to build our portfolios. It's how we want to have conversations. And so once we itemize our sales process, we just kind of create these tools and resources and pitches all to align to what it is that we're selling. Again, when it comes to really building the buyer confidence, I think one thing that a lot of times people are highly overlooking, they're saying, well, I get a lot of people calling that are kind of tire kickers and they just want to know how much things cost. I really believe that your website should be a major component of your portfolio. So yes, we want a beautiful printed portfolio to bring along and leave behind. But most importantly, I think your website has to be the portfolio. And I think the more transparent you are about pricing on the website, the better. If you're going to service residential landscape maintenance, why not put like 5 lot sizes on with your base monthly package price, and then note that there's extras for things like mulch and extra hourly work and things like that. Like, just get the pricing out there so that you don't have to call back 300 people to tell them the same information. It's very rare in the business for people to do this, but the companies that do are growing the fastest. They've got the happiest customers, and they've got the lowest cost of acquisition. So transparent pricing is where it's at. But for some reason, people are afraid to do this, almost like their competitors might find out. And there's really, like, ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out exactly what customers need for, like, pricing information, just to move forward and make decisions on whether they should even book a meeting. That's all we're trying to do here. We're not trying to say, here's the price of your job. We're just trying to say, hey, look, here's a beautiful backyard with a concrete swimming pool and a gazebo, heavy planting, irrigation, landscape lighting, beautiful patio, and an outdoor kitchen. And we can put a price tag on those major elements and say, this whole project was $385,000. Here's the breakdown. That would give somebody an idea when they're looking on your website at this beautiful backyard and what the major components cost. And then you can kind of be sure that when they click to book a meeting with you, that they're pretty confident in what things generally cost. So they're probably not going to waste your time. Then when you get out there on the next stage, you've got some transparency built into some budget pricing built right in your portfolio. When you're showing a beautiful project that's $50K, just say project budget $50,000 breakdown. When you're showing a beautiful $1 million backyard, same thing. I think it's very easy on the install side of the business to do this, and even on landscape maintenance for residential properties. Commercial properties, it's very hard to start putting budgets out. There's just too much complexity in the way that they want to do business and the type of properties. But ultimately, we want to definitely try to be as transparent as possible online and with any of our leave behind information. So where does that all lead us? Ultimately, what we're trying to do is get our prospects to talk to us enough so that we know what their problems are, so that we can explain how we'll solve the problems. And then ultimately what we're trying to do is figure out a way to explain our value and what differentiates us over our competitors so well that they stop worrying about the price and they start worrying about the value. And this is what separates incredible salespeople from everybody else. When you understand what their problem is, and then you start to sell, everything changes. We need to know exactly what their problems are so that we can figure out what the return on investment opportunities are when we start explaining what the return looks like. And we want to be able to be really clear about things like long-term benefits, what quality items we want to kind of really focus on, what testimonials and case studies we want to refer to, how we're going to actually break down value related to the products that they're actually interested in, and ultimately, like, how we're going to make sure that they're more satisfied than any of our competitors. This gets very easy based on the questions and answers that they provide. So we ask great questions. They tell us all of the problems that they've had in the past with other contractors, they're having currently, or maybe it's just, a problem they're having with the property. In any case, once we know what's wrong, we know how to fix, then we kind of come in with our value drivers. Now, when it comes to really getting good at explaining it, I think there is some categories, and I really like Gitomer's Sales Bible for this. When you start to decide how you're going to differentiate yourself from the competition, you kind of have to categorize your options. And again, when you start to train other people in your company how to really get good at selling value, they have to be able to sell all of these categories. And so, as I've said earlier, role playing, that's where you get really good at selling. Now, you should be role playing all of these different value drivers. So this doesn't happen in one or two sittings. Like, I think sales teams should practice every single day. If you practice for an hour a day, you're going to get really good at this. So what are your unique selling propositions for each buyer persona? How are you going to be able to customize solutions? What is it that's really innovative about the way that you solve that problem? Whether it's like your equipment or the training or the software or the service verification that you offer or the itemized billing. Like, what is it that makes you so much better? Your live dashboard of for dispatch, for snow plowing. Like, there's something there that needs to come through very clearly in every conversation. And when you don't train your sales staff, they don't get it right because they forget. And let's be honest, there's way too many value drivers for people to remember. And so we want to know that we've got the top value drivers baked into each buyer persona or customer profile so that we get really good at making sure we cover the important ones every time that we go to work. So we want to be able to explain why our customer service is better than our competitors. And we want really good examples, and we want them to be meaningful. We don't want to say our customer service is better. We want to say that our customer service is better because we have somebody answering the phone 24 hours a day. We've got a live customer portal where you can log in and see what time your property was serviced. When you get an invoice, you'll see the date, the time, the weather of when we serviced your property. Like, we want meaningful reasons of why our customer service is better. If it's a design build project, we want to explain that we're going to assign a designer project manager to their property. They're going to be with them every step of the way from the day that we start the design to the time that we finish the project, right on through to the final warranty inspection a year or two later. That same person is going to be there every step of the way, and we're going to be communicating very clearly using a 12-month calendar with our warranty inspection booked a year in advance. Something has to be different. And those are obviously just examples, but you have to know what those are. And I believe that when you create a system, when you train your staff, your customers hear it very, very quickly. The prospects hear it, and they want to do business with companies that have systems, that have well-trained salespeople, because ultimately your sales process does translate into operations. And that's a lot of what we're here talking about. Is once you build all of this on a sales process, it becomes a lot easier to pass off to operations and get the work done a lot more efficiently downstream. So again, we want to be able to differentiate ourselves based on these different topics. Could be sustainability. If you're selling to a major company that's ISO 9000 and they've got all kinds of initiatives, you need to know that. And that's why we want to research in advance. Could be an exclusive offering that you're putting out specifically for this customer for one reason or another. Again, we want to be able to talk through that visual portfolio and really drive value by showing them like what makes our work different. I think, some key things when it comes to communication. This is something when really training sales staff and when you're doing role play, kind of judge each other a little bit harshly on this. It's really important that you understand how to communicate really, really clearly when you're explaining value and differentiating yourself from others. Ultimately, sometimes people think it's good enough to say we have better customer service. And that's not good enough. Like, every company in the world claims to be open 24/7, have the best customer service and the best pricing. That stuff doesn't work. What you need to do is explain exactly what makes you different. And I think speaking to the customer's priorities that they've told you and explaining how you solve those issues differently than your competitors with real examples is how you win. I think all too often salespeople aren't trained well enough, so they don't know how to speak to those priorities in a meaningful way. Again, using visuals and giving your sales team really good tools to allow them to walk a prospect through the sales process, I think makes a big difference. Portfolio obviously is gold when selling landscaping. Eliminate all the technical stuff. Just talk normal. We don't need to use Latin names for plants to impress people. We don't need to talk about our equipment as though we're talking to our mechanic. We just need to use simple terminology. Really focusing on highlighting how this is going to change their life as an individual, whether it's for their home or their business. How are we actually going to improve their lifestyle? How are we going to improve their day, their experience at their office or their home based on the work that we're going to provide? Really quantifying things, I think, is important. This is like taking an approach where we really itemize the benefits and create a statement that explains to them just how much savings there is. And in order to do that, we have to have questions that really help them surface those tidbits of information as we go through the conversation, so that we can help them quantify things. What would it cost if a snowplow contractor didn't show up on time here and your car parts weren't able to leave your loading dock on time to get to the car parts manufacturer, to the car manufacturing facility? When they tell us this information, we can start to put much better metrics in front of them. Telling stories about how you've solved these problems in the past, and obviously really just reiterating all of our benefit statements throughout the Q&A, I think is most impactful. And then, ultimately, when you get that first meeting, we all know there's a first impression. Early on in my years, I thought showing up in a nice pickup truck was going to be a good first impression. Over the years, that morphed a little bit. Showing up on time, let's be honest, like that in itself is important. Landscapers aren't great at showing up on time. I mean, we hold workshops all over the country, and 20% of the people are late. I'd hate to see what that looks like for meetings. Your customer's time is worth more than yours. You have to be there on time. Presenting yourself really professionally, I think this goes without saying, but make sure that your salespeople are really presenting themselves as professionally as you'd hope. Not showing up in dirty work clothes, not smelling like cigarette smoke. Showing up prepared with a customer file, with that customer's name on the file, with sales resources already all in the file, like showing up like you're there to win and like you expect that this is going to turn into business, I think is really important. Showing really true, genuine interest in what it is that they're calling us for, or what it is that we've called them to try to help solve. And then obviously listening and communicating are kind of go without saying, but we're really, really focused on explaining value and giving valuable information and educating them during this meeting. I think if you leave the meeting having given them some new information and you've at the very least educated them to make a better buying decision, and you've helped them understand what they should be actually concerned about in terms of value when making a decision. If you've helped them create the buying criteria for this purchase, then I think you've left a memorable experience. And so for me, this number 6, providing valuable information, is the most important thing. And the follow-up kind of ties into that. Once you've had that valuable piece of information exchanged verbally, make sure that you follow up really promptly and you give them some sort of a resource. That could be a link to your portfolio to look at other projects. That could be a document that you've created of considerations when hiring a snowplow contractor, for example. This is you saying, hey, it's really important that you consider all of these things. I'll send you a document, and that way, in any upcoming meetings you might have with other snowplow companies, you can make sure that they're also doing all of these things. Hopefully, that'll just be helpful when you're making your final decision. That in itself shows confidence. I think that in itself shows that you are the trusted advisor. And I think that creates this memorable experience in your first meeting where, ultimately they're going to respond to other follow-ups and other things in the future. And if you don't end up selling them this time, maybe they'll be back next time because of that impression that you've left. In any case, I think keeping a strong stable of contacts, particularly if you are selling commercial services, make sure that even if you lose the deal, you send the thank you note, keep them on a regular drip email campaign to keep them engaged, invite them out to social events that you might be hosting, kind of stay in contact with them. And sometimes it's amazing how quickly this turns into new business, for sure. I'll take some questions if there are any, but if there's not, next week we're going to be back covering objection handling and prevention. We're going to get into the weeds on what some objections are and sort of how to turn those objections into opportunities to actually move right to a close. In my experience, once we minimize the number of objections, kind of gives us the right to drop our sort of final statements that really reinforce our capability to solve the problem and ask for business. And so we're going to talk through that a little bit further next week. I'm going to talk more about how to really reinforce value and ask for the close. Don't see any questions, and we're a few minutes away from being out of time, so I think we'll call it a day. But thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining here again this week, and we'll see you next time.